Super Rugby team of the tournament, folks. We're going to pick 15 guys, make a team of the tournament for the 2022 season, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on who you would have in and who you would have out. I'm not going with the standard procedure of picking the 15 guys, because that would pretty much mean like 6 Crusaders and 5 Blues and a token Chief or a Hurricane or something like that. I'm going to pick a guy from each team, and the top 3 teams can get 2 guys. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's the way I prefer to do it, because essentially those teams, like Rugby Pass did one, it was 6 Blues, 4 Crusaders, 3 Chiefs, a Brumby and a Red. I don't know, man, like a lot of people are going to pretty much pick a very similar team with a kind of few changes here or there. I like genuinely having a look at guys from all the teams, because there are some guys who are genuine contenders for a team of the season, even if they played on a losing team. But it's kind of hard to justify when you've got a team that won a trophy, you know what I mean? So that's the way I like doing it. I encourage you all to have a crack, because it's not that easy. I do feel like it's more of a conversation if you're having to pick from each team rather than just picking 6 Crusaders and 5 Blues kind of thing, plus a few other guys. Anyway, we're going to go through them, and as always, you guys let me know your thoughts. Loosehead was a tough one, but when in doubt, go with the Crusaders prop. It's kind of my motto. Remember, I only get 2 Crusaders, so I'm thinking pretty highly of George Bower. I ran his numbers, and they actually come up looking pretty good, don't they? I mean, one of the first things you got to look at with props is how do they do in the scrum. I think Bower does pretty well. One of the main measurements of that is how many penalties does he concede, and I can tell you right now, it's a lot less than most of the other props. He concedes like a penalty a game, which is pretty low. A lot of props are like 2 or 3 penalties a game. So, yeah, the scrummaging aspect of his game is obviously pretty good. You would expect no less from a Crusaders prop. Also, around the park, he's pretty good, man. Runs over 10 meters a game. In context, like a big unit like ALLAALATOA, who's known for his carries, is like 15 meters a game. So Bower being at 10 is still way above the average. Most props are in single digits. So he's pretty good around the park. I would say, 6 meters odd is the average for most props. He gets through 6 tackles a game, which is about average. He tackles at 89%, which is pretty good without being fantastic. He's won 3 turnovers throughout Super Rugby. I think George Bower, he's been pretty good all season, and he is in the All Blacks for a reason. Hooker, I have went for another All Black in Samasoni Tokeaho. He's a big unit of a ball-carrying hooker, isn't he? If you want a hooker who can carry the ball like no other, I think he's your guy. Like 25 meters a game from Tokeaho. In context, Taylor is 19, Eklund is 16, Whainga'a is 13. So Tokeaho likes carrying the ball, and that's not a bad thing for the Chiefs. Remember, I get 2 Chiefs, so because the Chiefs finished 3rd. So he is one of my 2 Chiefs. He averaged like 10 carries a game. He scored 5 tries. He's had the most line-out throws won of any hooker, which means he gets a fair few minutes, to be fair. And I saw one person criticizing his line-out throwing the other day, but the Chiefs have got the 2nd best line-out completion rate in the entire Super Rugby competition. So I think he's pretty solid. 2 defenders beaten the game. Most hookers won. Yeah, man, I know Taylor's kind of the incumbent, but Tokeaho surely is ahead of Dane Coles at the moment, eh? Has to be. The guy's in cracking form. So, yeah, Samasoni Tokeaho for mine. And tight head, I put an Aussie here. There were a lot of Brumbies to choose from, and the way their maul works, I had to go for one of their forwards. I'm pretty chuffed to go with ALLAALATOA. Kind of like Bower, I mean, you've got to be looking at the scrummaging, and that's a key aspect of the Brumbies game, plus their maul. So he's another one who concedes really not that many penalties at scrum time. It's not that often we see him get dominated. He's part of that big Brumbies forward pack. He's getting like 11 tackles a game. Most of the props are, again, in single digits, so his work rate's pretty massive, and he's at 94%, which is a pretty good tackling completion rate. So, yeah, you could easily go with one of the Brumbies locks or their hookers or even one of their loosies, but I only get one Brumby, and I think ALLAALATOA is a pretty tidy pick, personally. I know props don't get the flashy stuff, but they're such a key part of the game. Locks, I've gone with my one and only Rebel in Matt Phillip. And I know the Crusaders locks certainly stood out in that Super Rugby final. But over the course of the season and in a losing team, I think Matt Phillip has proved to be pretty useful. And I think the Wallabies will be pretty pleased with the season he's had. He's the third guy in the competition for line-out wins. He's the third guy for line-out steals. He's averaging 21 run meters a game. Most of the locks are around 10, like Scott Barrett averages 14 run meters a game. So 21 from Matt Phillip is pretty good. Average of 8 tackles a game. There's nothing flash. It's about right. 87% is his tackling completion rate. Again, that's fine without being great or terrible. But yeah, man, he's a good mobile lock. He's good in the air. Gets through his core roll pretty well. And I think he did a pretty solid job for the Rebels in what wasn't the easiest season, you'd have to say. Number 5, it's going to look, because we always think about that most recent game, and the Blues lost the final, but Tom Robinson. And I'm not sure I like him at lock, personally, but I got 2 Blues to fit in this team. So I've gone with Tom Robinson. 25 line-out wins across the competition is by no means one of the top guys, and he played about half the season in the second row, half the season in the back row. He's got like 2 fewer line-out takes than like Sam Whitelock. Sam Whitelock, I think, took 27. Robinson took 25. So that's pretty decent for a guy who only played half the season at lock, although he does jump when he's in the loose as well. So he's like, half the line-out takes of some of the top guys like Matt Phillip. But still right up there. And with him playing lock, you do get that kind of, extra bit of work rate in the loose that a lot of the locks maybe aren't as mobile enough to kind of complete. Like, he's getting 10 plus tackles a game and he's tackling at 90%. He's averaging 4 meters a carry, almost 4 meters. Most of the locks are like 2 or 3. Like Tupuvai, who's a pretty big ball carrying lock, averages 2.5 meters a carry. Tom Robinson's almost at 4. Sam Whitelock's at 2. Like, he's like the stereotypical lock, right? So you do get that bit of extra firepower from him around the park. You maybe don't get some of the elements that you need to win the ball in the air that the Crusaders exploited in the final. But I think over the course of the season, Big Red was certainly pretty good. And people were talking about him for the All Blacks before that final. Didn't eventuate. I don't think the selectors had him in mind personally anyway. But there you go. Tom Robinson in the second row. Number 6, and I've kind of cheated a wee bit. He did play a little bit of 6 when Michael Hooper came back. But my one Waratah, you might think I would just go with a big name like Michael Hooper. But if you watch the Waratahs this season, you know Charlie Gamble was on absolute fire. I don't think he's quite eligible for the Aussies yet. But man, did he have a pretty bloody good season. He's averaging 13 tackles a game, which is one of the top guys in the competition. And he's tackling at 97%, which is bonkers. That's crazy. So, yeah, man, defensively, the guy was an absolute powerhouse. He won 16 turnovers in this competition, which I think is second overall. That's more than Tom Christie, who got to play more games. It's more than ARDIE SAVEA, right? More than Dalton Papali'i. Like, the guy was getting turnovers for fun. Although I've picked him at 6, which is not really where you would traditionally be looking for a pilferer, but he certainly got that about him. 18 run meters a game is better than Christie, but he's a bit weak if you compare him to some of the other guys who've got a better running game. Like Michael Hooper's 22, which is a little bit higher. Fraser McCreight is like 35. And then there's some other guys who get even more in the loose. But yeah, Charlie Gamble, he had quite the season. More of a 7, but they did shift him to 6. So I'm going to have to pair him with someone else who can kind of balance with that, but we'll get to that in a second. Overall, I think for the Waratahs this season, he was an absolute unit, and the mustache goes pretty well too. Number 7, and it's a bit of a cheat. I've gone with ARDIE SAVEA. He played 8, but I've chucked him in at 7. 42 meters a game. Like I mentioned, Gamble had like 18, Hooper 22, 42 meters a game. God, that guy, even when the Hurricanes didn't look good, he still looked good, eh? ARDIE SAVEA is just the next level. Beats 3 defenders a game. 10 tackles a game at 96% is also phenomenal. He gets his hand on the ball a lot. He's averaging more than 7 passes a game. He has that big old dummy that nobody ever falls for. His involvement rates are just huge, man. ARDIE SAVEA. He's one of those weird guys that where even when the team doesn't look that flash, he still looks pretty amazing. So sometimes he pulls that team by the scruff of the neck, eh? You'd be hard-pressed not to include him. If you only get one Hurricane, you'd be hard-pressed to go with anyone but SAVEA. But depends, man. You gotta look at some other Lucies as well. There's certainly some other guys who played 7. Dalton Papali'i, man. Tom Christie. Yeah, there's a bunch of other guys who played well. I mean, even Charlie Gamble, you could chuck him in at 7 because he played more 7 than he did 6. But there you go. So who's I put in at 8 because I moved SAVEA from 8. I ended up going with one of the Moana Pasifika boys and Henry Time Stowers. He's got an S on his name. He's a guy who's never going to make team of the season because he plays for a team that lost most of their games. But honestly, man, again, if you watch his games, you know that guy, when his team was getting well beaten, still looked like one of the best players on the park. I can't underestimate. And the numbers back it up. Remember I said ARDIE SAVEA got 42 run meters a game? STOWERS gets 44. And a team which didn't have much ball. They were living off scraps for the majority of the start of the season anyway. Like 30 or 40% possession. He still cracks through a bunch of run meters. Like Sowakula's 31. STOWERS is 44. He's getting 13 tackles a game. Like Sowakula's 10. Remember I said ARDIE SAVEA was 10. So 4 passes, maybe not as much as ARDIE, but he's still getting his hands on the pill a fair bit for a Lucy. The guy was just a machine. So it's great to see a guy like that performing as well as he did for a team which was getting well beaten. I honestly do think he was a standout player. So he's not going to get the same kudos as the guys like Sowakula, who's been named in the All Blacks, like SAVEA, who is a legit world-class player. He plays for Samoa, so he's not going to get the same credit, like I said, but the guy was phenomenal. He had a great season, so pretty pleased to chuck him on the board. So that's the forwards. On to the backs. I have chucked in my one red in at number 9 in the old haircut man, Tate McDermott. Tate McDermott. He kind of stands out because of how much he runs the ball. Obviously, he passes a ton because he's a 9. He's one of the top guys for passes, but you're going to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. But man, does he love a carry. He carries 6 times a game. And which other 9s do you think like taking the ball to line? TJ, Brad Weber, both those guys, 4 runs a game. Tate's at 6. Christie, that's Finlay's at 3. Aaron Smith at 2. Bryn Hall's like 1.8. So Tate loves sniping and taking the ball to the line more than most halfbacks. That's pretty obvious. He gets more run meters because he makes more runs. So he's that kind of guy. I mean, Jake Gordon had a fair few good runs as well, but he's that kind of guy that keeps defenses in 2 minds because you legit don't know if he's gonna, if he's gonna take it at you, or if he's going to keep distributing, or if he's going to put boots of ball. He's got 5 try assists across the season, which is pretty good. Like Bryn Hall's got 10. Bryn Hall obviously played more games. But yeah, Bryn Hall was probably like the ultimate in terms of distributing halfbacks this season. I think he even managed to kind of edge Drummond for that number 1 spot, even though they kind of tend to chop and change traditionally. But yeah, man, like his ball and hand stats, McDermott, are just phenomenal. Defenders beaten, run meters, like I mentioned, like 28 defenders beaten. The next best halfback is 14. That's Weber and Fines-Lelawasa. So yeah, his tackling percentage is a bit low. To be fair, a lot of the halfbacks have got better tackling rates than McDermott, but sometimes he does like to fly out of the line to disrupt more than necessarily make a solid tackle. So I thought McDermott had a pretty good season, and I love a halfback who's not afraid to have a run. So there you go. Number 10 is probably going to cause people to leave angry comments, but here we go. Beauden Barrett. Moana certainly outclassed them in the final. Oh man, I'm not going to argue that point. I'm a Blues fan, but this is team of the season, not team of the final. So team of the season, I got to get a Blues guy in. I was pretty much only looking at Bodie or Richie for the spot. Like, do you want the guy who has more carries, try assists, clean breaks, and a higher tackling percentage? Then you want Bodie. If you want the guy who has more passes, more defenders beaten, and better goal kicking, you want Richie. So It's kind of take your pick. They played slightly different games. They both had a clutch drop goal throughout the season, although Richie's one was in the final, so it probably adds a bit more weight. They both kicked for territory pretty well. BEAUDEN's cross kicks in the Blues lineup looked pretty good, but honestly, man, I think that's as good a season we've seen from Bodie for a while anyway. Like, he's been with the Blues a couple of seasons now, a bit COVID disrupted, but certainly that's the most confident we've seen him playing for the Blues, and maybe, I don't know, compared to his kind of last season at the Hurricanes. But yeah, man, like his carries are better than all the 10s. He scored more tries, try assists, clean breaks. Like I mentioned, he's got pretty good tackling rate. So Bodie didn't lead the Blues to the final. Richie was the guy for that game, but people are going to hate on him. Bodie had a pretty good year at 10. 11 is another guy who I don't think is going to get into anyone's team of the season if they're picking, just no holds, no restrictions. But from the Fijian Drua, VINAYA HABOSI, man, he was electric. I don't know what his contract's like with the Drua. I hope it's long. If it's only 1 year, I would not be surprised if he's already signed with a French club or somebody else, because that guy was amazing. Like, he's averaging 86 run meters a game. I know I love my stats, but he's second only to Will Jordan, and Will Jordan's a fullback, so they tend to get a few easier meters. And I'm not going to discount Will Jordan's impact, but like, to put it into context, HABOSI 86 run meters a game. Some of the other top wingers, Tom Wright 42 run meters a game, Mark Talia 49, Nana Saturo 62, Rayasi 78, 86 for HABOSI is crazy. He's getting 10 meters a carry. Every time that guy gets the ball, he's averaging 10 meters. Well, obviously, sometimes he's going to get 60, sometimes he's going to get 1. But man, that's still crazy numbers. Like, Will Jordan averages 7. He scores 5 tries. He gets 2 try assists. The guy was amazing. If you watched any of the Drua games, you will not forget that name. He was an absolute star. One of the most fun guys to watch of all season for me. So, yep, there we go. Number 12. I have put in my Highlander in Thomas UMAGA JENSEN. Played a mixture of 12 and 13 this season. And he's kind of one of those guys that's like just balanced. Like, overall, had a pretty good season in all aspects of his game, but is not like the top guy in anything. So, like, he beats 3 defenders a game. That's less than Levi Almore, but more than some of the other guys. He's got 2 tries, 2 try assists. He passes 5 times a game, which is more than most. Like, he's not afraid to distribute the ball. He's not just a big crash ball 12, right? He can, but he's got a good mixed game. He tackles at 87%, which is certainly better than most of the guys who had higher offensive numbers than him. So he's another guy who I think was talked about by a fair few fans this season as to potential All Blacks selection, but the All Blacks midfield still remains a bit of a question, and with Roger Tuivasa-Sheck kind of getting fast-tracked, Thomas UMAGA JENSEN is not in that squad, but I think overall he had a pretty good season. Would I have him in my team as the best 12 if I wasn't picking one from each team? Probably not. But I do think he was legit pretty good all season. So, yeah, Thomas UMAGA JENSEN for 12. And 13, I've gone with my other chief in Alex NANKIVELL. They did stick him out on the wing a couple of times when they were pretty desperate for players. The Chiefs had COVID disruptions, mean a few guys were put into unfamiliar positions, and he certainly looks better in the midfield. But he gets really good go forward, 5 meters of carries. That's similar to like Vota from the Drua, who was really effective. He doesn't match Rico in pretty much any of the stats. I'm going to put that right out here. But like 7 tries this season is among the top try scorers. That is better than Rico. 3 try assists. He's passing like Thomas UMAGA JENSEN kind of 5 times a game, which is pretty high. I don't think it's quite as high as Rico, but it's pretty high. He's tackling at 85%, which is pretty high. I don't think it's as high as Rico. I think Rico was a bit higher. His turnovers conceded is legit far too high. But he loves an offload. He offloads like mad. And, when it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think Alex NANKIVELL is another kind of potential guy for the future. He looked really good this season, and I reckon he's still got more to show us. 2 players left. You might be able to guess who they are. number 14, and it's a bit of a cheat because he played on the left wing, is Manasa Mataele. Him and HABOSI both played on the left wing. And I think there's stats that show like left wingers tend to get more ball than right wingers. I think something about people naturally right-handers passing left better. But Mataele for the Force was legit an attacking threat as well. 85 run meters a game. I know I'm bombarding you guys with stats, but that's only behind HABOSI and Will Jordan, like for the Force, who would kind of top of the table side. So Mataele was legit very dangerous. He's beaten 3 defenders a game. He beats both Will Jordan and HABOSI to try assists. Like that guy would be legit the guy who makes the break and just draws the fullback, makes that final pass, and then the Force go over for a try. So 4 try assists, is one of the better guys this season. Gets over a clean break a game. He gets 5 tries himself. Yeah, pretty good year, man. He's been a very good acquisition for the Force. His tackling rate of 69% is genuinely pretty low. Like, that's not good. Like, a more complete winger like SAVEA Reese is up in the 80s. So, 82% I think is Reese. So, I think most people would probably pick Reese for their legit right winger this year. But Mataele is certainly worthy of a mention. And I started with a Crusader. I'm going to finish with a Crusader. I can only pick 2. And it wouldn't be right, honestly, if I didn't pick Will Jordan. I know that means, I've not picked guys like Bryn Hall and Moana and Scotty Barrett and Christie and Matera and all these other Crusaders guys who had a great year in winning that trophy. But Will Jordan is just genuinely, I think, playing on another level to most of the guys in Super Rugby. He's got a gift, eh? He's a very talented rugby player. 101 average run meters a game. Remember, HABOSI was second with like 86? 101. Most tries in the game equal to, most tries in the competition equal to Reese and Whainganuku, his teammates. 10 tries. So top equal try scorer. 2 clean breaks a game almost. 5 defenders beaten a game almost. 3 try assists in the season, which is more than Reese and more than Whainganuku. 10 passes a game for a fullback is massive. Like, the guy, I don't know, you've seen him play. He cuts guys to bits and makes people who are genuinely pretty good rugby players look pretty silly. His tackling rate of 74% could be better. If I was going to say there's one stat that didn't look that flash for Will Jordan, but I can't say too much more about him because he is just a phenomenal player. But there you go, folks. That's the team of the season. If you're picking 1 guy from every team and 2 guys from the top 3 teams, so the Crusaders, the Blues, and the Chiefs. So, yeah, have a crack at it. It's not that easy. Like, I know you would say you want this guy, you want that guy, but if you take one in, it means you got to take another one out. So it's always a bit of a juggle as to which guy goes into which position. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. I do think some of these guys, like HABOSI, like STOWERS, like Charlie Gamble, like even ALLAALATOA, like guys who maybe weren't in the final. I mean, ALLAALATOA was in the semi-finals, but some of these guys who played, especially the ones who played with teams that didn't have winning records, won't really get talked about that much. But I still think they had some pretty outstanding seasons, not just from the Blues and Crusaders. So, yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. Who would you have in your team? And, yeah, I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.